Serious, have you ever been in a conversation with someone that made you realize that any conversation between that person and you will never go in any meaningful direction? Blind date with a dude set up through parents' friends. Smart guy, relatively attractive. We go get dinner and he brings up an article I wrote in a law journal, which means he googled me and was proud of it. Whatever. Sure. So he starts talking about my article on ERISA. He clearly doesn't understand it, but that won't deter him from continuing to lecture me about it. I try to get a word in edgewise but he'd have none of that. So I decided to conduct an experiment. I sat back, nodded my head, and said not a word while clocking how long I could do that until he noticed. It was the longest 1 hour and 40 minutes of my life. He didn't notice. Wow, that is some serious patience. I wouldn't last 5-10 minutes tops. Every time I try and talk to my roommate, he goes off on some random tangent into history or politics. I asked him how dinner was once and within 1 minute he was talking about the Iraq War. Dinner isn't free. There's always one friend who has to one-up your story. Those conversations never end well. Can I just enjoy my moment of thunder, please? A friend told me on night that he slept with his best friend's wife. He was also the best man. I knew at that moment that from now on, anything this guy said would be crap to my ears. I was asked to talk to a girl about how her attitude was out of control by a few younger members in our shared activity. I told her very nicely that some of the things she was saying were really upsetting people. She replied that they needed to get over it. A few days later I found out that she was ranting to her friends that I was practicing black magic and was attempting to injure her with my powers. I don't think a rational conversation is possible with her. I think I'll start mumbling nonsense under my breath whenever I see her now, and maybe make a voodoo doll. Have a dead leaf in your hand, make eye contact with her, mumble or chant, crush the leaf, and blow the particles in her direction and then clearly say so it shall be. I went on a date once. Lovely girl, long brown hair and blue eyes, absolutely beautiful. I met her in the middle of town and we walked to a Brazilian restaurant, making small chit chat. Fast forward half an hour and we are sat there chatting about random crap when I mention I went stargazing out in Pemberton, BC when I visited her Whistler. Her reply not only stunned me, but wholeheartedly convinced me that she's certainly not the girl for me. You actually believe in stars? Yep. I was on the phone with my sister, trying to reason with her, and it just hit me that there would never, ever be a point. I started crying and she thought it was because she'd hurt my feelings. I didn't correct her. There was no point. I have the exact same with one of my brothers. My oldest brother and I just agreed not to bother anymore. I teach AP biology for a Christian school. Any conversation with the parents about me not teaching creationism or me teaching too much evolution biology only makes sense in the light of evolution. A Russian Christian scientist said that. I already knew there's nothing I can say to convince them. All I can do is try my best to make sure the kids don't end up as science illiterate as some of their parents. I had an old boss who always had to have the last word in any conversation. I could be agreeing with every word he said, or talking about something completely inconsequential, and he would turn it into a confrontation, or end it with an ultimatum. Nearly every conversation with him went something like this. Boss, the sky is blue. Me, you're right, it is. It always has been. Boss, I said the sky is blue. Is that going to be a problem? I once had a conversation that ended with a grown woman physically running away while saying something so that she could have the last word. I have two fairly consistently. They are either 1. The one-upper. Basically, no matter what story you or someone else in the dialogue has, they just can't sit and enjoy it. They have to one-up yours. Heath. 2. The one side of a coiner. People who have trouble with empathy, sympathy or understanding the other side of an argument. The blind Democrat or Republican who will fight and die for a strict set of unmoving beliefs. The console versus PC person who just can't see why the other side is justifiable. Zach. Hi, Joe. Hi, Ted. How's things? Okay, I work in IT and just got a new Windows server installed for accounting. Long day. Did you know that Microsoft is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Bilderbergers? And that your so-called server is only serving the cause of the Illuminati by secretly uploading all your information to a small cabal of international bankers instated by the lizard people of Epsilon 7? Yep, go. There's an acquaintance in town who does this every time we bump into each other. Everything's a conspiracy. OJ was innocent. New World Order. etc etc. I avoid him as much as possible. Parents almost called the cops on one of my newer friends when I was 15 because they were convinced that we were in a sexual prostitution relationship. In reality, we had exchanged holiday presents and his had an accompanying card that, along with the standard pleasantries, said something along how nice it was to get to know the different sides of someone. Parent doing who knows what finds it in my drawer. Draws absolute possible worst conclusion. Q 3-hour-long argument with middle-aged Chinese immigrants about what a figure of speech is, in which at no point am I allowed to turn to a computer and pull up something that defines the word side as not a physical side of tea and but, because how dare I be disrespectful and insinuate that they were wrong when they so clearly weren't. In hindsight, I'm not quite sure how I managed to be the first college student in the family. Weirder yet, comma commonly translated as side, has all kinds of figurative meanings. I have a friend who I love hanging out with, but I can never just talk with her. She only ever wants to be and moan about things or talk about 2 TV shows. Our conversations never have any variety, and if they do they always end up revolving around her. Another friend only ever talks about Supernatural, her slightly rappy sounding conquests, commenting on the hotness people around her or a combination of those. She has no filter whatsoever and it makes everyone uncomfortable. And that's coming from someone who is about as open as you can get. But I understand it isn't about what you're comfortable sharing, it's about what others are comfortable hearing. I was talking about being sexually assaulted by a roommate's friend who snuck into my bed while I was asleep and was fondling me. Some guy asked me what I was wearing. Yeah, my aunt married a special sort of zealot. He asked for examples of why I left the church. I brought up the whole inequality no women priests thing. He absolutely flipped his crap. He screamed at me, "Can men give birth to children?" I said no. He responded, "Then how the heck can women give birth to the Holy Eucharist?" Still hurts my head 20 years later. Oh, for sure. Usually it starts off when I tell them I make my living as an astronomer, and then they start to tell me all about how astrology is fascinating and what's my sign, and now whenever this happens I'm actually very polite and patiently explain how astrology is not the same, and will even explain why astrology isn't real if it seems like the person might be open to that, but usually it's just brushed off. People who believe in astrology these days really want to believe in it because they want to more than anything else. I've also done the experiment where I try to steer the conversation towards some real, actual exciting things in the universe. New discoveries that are far more exciting than what people could imagine who made up astrology a few thousand years ago could begin to think up, but my experience with those who believe in astrology is they're not interested. That part makes me a bit sad. But I think it's basically if you have no real filter for what's real and what's not, it's hard to get excited about the real stuff. I'm not sure if this is exactly what you're looking for, but I have a good friend who used to be a freaking atrocious junkie. Talking with him when he was in the throes of his addiction was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. Didn't matter what we discussed, the conversation would always go back to his addiction, which didn't really bother me initially, because I figured if he was talking about it, maybe it meant he was wanting to get help in some way. But the cyclic nature of our conversations was as such that I would tire of talking about it within 20-30 minutes. It would go something like this. Me: "So why do you do this to yourself?" Him: "Because I don't give a frick about anything, man, at all." Me: "Well, if you don't give a frick, why do you keep hanging out with me? Why are you bothering to be alive at all? Clearly it hurts you that you're upsetting your friends and family." Him: "Yeah, and when I feel like that, all I want to do is shoot up." Me: "Well, do you want to get clean?" Him: "I do, but I just can't." Me: "Why can't you? What's stopping you?" Him: I don't care, man. I don't give a frick about anything. And it would just go like that, over and over and over until I was just freaking incapable of having the conversation anymore. We got into so many screaming matches and even a few physical altercations, until the point where I just cut him out of my life completely. I came to the conclusion that I wasn't going to be responsible for him anymore. For years I was letting him come over and stay on my couch so he could kick it, and it always ended the same way, with him going to score when I wasn't looking. Finally we had a huge explosion of a confrontation and I told him to get the frick out. Didn't speak to him for 6 solid years and he got a girl pregnant somewhere down the line, and somehow that was the thing that got him to see reason. He came around, got clean, and has been completely clean off junk for nearly 4 years. He takes care of his kid, has his own place, holds down a job. He's inspiring as heck, and our conversations are just amazing. We can talk for hours. I remember missing that when he was in that dark hole of addiction. Having a conversation with a junkie is a maddening and tiring experience. Having a conversation with a junkie you love is a heartbreaking one. The maintenance guy at my job always has to talk to me about his boat and how his wife still blows him all the time. That's it, nothing else. Same conversations for 2 years. I mean, props to the guy for getting his dong wet on the reg at 60 years old, but that's really the last thing I want to picture when I'm mixing dangerous chemicals. Amazing. Your wife still blows me, too. Trying to talk with my mother-in-law about nutrition. She got extremely obese because of a bad diet. Tons of soda every day. She didn't drink water, mostly meat, cheese, and bread, almost no vegetables or fruit, and lots of candy. She had fat surgery and got skinny. Now she's a carb counter, but she has no idea how actual nutrition works. She still hates vegetables. She still eats mostly meat and cheese, and still eats lots of candy. She's replaced her soda with little artificially sweetened Kool-Aid type packets she puts in her water, because of course artificial sweetener has no calories, so that means it's okay, and plain water is so disgusting. She has bad gas all the time and has to go to the bathroom often. Her surgery will slowly undo itself and she'll be fat again, and I know that she will never blame herself. The way she eats and drinks disgusts me. My wife, her daughter, is 100% on my side with this, and it's actually a strain on their relationship because she's afraid her mother's bad habits will rub off on our kids. The good news is she lives in a different state, so there aren't many chances for that to happen. Those people that ask about your life and the moment you start to answer their question, they make it about them. Some people just are not good listeners. My coworker yesterday about how he will never give his kid vaccines because they cause autism. Nope. Showed him how the doctor that originated that idea was discredited and lost his license. His reply, well, there are tons of other studies that show it also. And you can't believe everything you see online anyway. Really? Where did you get your information? My mom, and she knows all about that. She is a homeschool teacher. Ugh. Your mom's wrong, buddy. Sorry about that. Anytime I'm talking to somebody and they claim I'm being disrespectful and throw out I'm a X amount of years veteran of insert military branch, so you need to watch your tone with me. I'm perfectly respectful to everybody I meet. You being a veteran does not entitle you to more respect than any average person. Respect, to me, is not based on your title or a position you hold. It's based on your personality, how you treat other people. If you're an butthole, I don't care if you saved the lives of every person on earth. You're still an butthole and I will treat you as such. There was this girl who was roommates with a few people in my immediate friend circle, and not to be mean, but she is probably the dumbest non-special needs person I have ever met. She was really into talking about politics and race and how she's constantly discriminated against because she's Jewish, and going on and on about why she's a vegetarian without ever getting to the point. Some gems from her. I eat fish because, like, fish are like bugs and bugs aren't smart, so I'm still a vegetarian. I'm more like a vegan because sometimes I eat whatever I want. When 2 of her professional chef roommates were searching for ginger in the kitchen. Oh, you can just use cumin spice. Trying to say cumin. Because, like, all spices are the same. I really tried to be nice and tolerant of her, but there's only so much crap like that I can sit through. When 2 of her professional chef roommates were searching for ginger in the kitchen. Oh, you can just use cumin spice. Trying to say cumin. Because, like, All spices are the same. Oh dear God. One of my friends is in the military and has a very narrow viewpoint of things. He's one of those thanks for nothing Obama kind of guys. He's one of my best friends and I love talking to him, but anytime he brings up politics I try to change the subject because for him it's always Obama's fault for everything. I'm not even necessarily pro-Obama, but he'll randomly be like, did you know Obama didn't salute a soldier when he got off a plane today? Ugh, so disrespectful. He really shouldn't be bitching about a superior officer like that. Yes, a couple of times I've discovered that someone was straight up lying to me. At that point there is no fixing it. If you talk to a liar, expect to be lied to. If you're expecting lies, why even bother? This girl I was talking to, she always brought up her ex-boyfriend no matter what I tried talking to her about. I decided to stop talking to her. Classmate went off on a tangent about how all homosexuals will burn in heck while having a cigarette during break. I stopped listening to anything he said after that. Yeah, but I mean, it sounds like he thinks they'll be fine as long as they don't take any cigarette breaks. I think about this often. There are some people that may even have come from the same area and general background, that have had such differing experiences from yours that there is very little common ground or interests that you can actually discuss in any meaningful way. Personal examples I have found so far include members of my wife's family. We grew up in the same area geographically and went to the same school system. We know the same people and were close to the same household income, although most of them were less well off. However, our outlooks on life, raising children, politics, entertainment, music, lifestyle are so vastly different that the only thing we have conversations about is the family, the one thing we have in common. It's fascinating to me that all of these things can be so vastly different even though our histories are relatively similar. Having a conversation with people that ask details of a story that are not important relevant to the story. Me. Guess what happened to me? I was walking down the street and found a bag money detail guy. Was it raining? Was the meat market open? What color pants did you have on? I was talking about how reading the diary of Anne Frank was really giving me a much different perspective on the situation in the Middle East. From the point of view of the various persecuted groups who live in or exiled from different countries based on religion and ethnicity. I literally just said something like, because of the spin of media coverage, I've never thought before about children today growing up in hiding or persecuted to that extent, and the fact that so many people can suffer without me ever having to think about it is so upsetting. She got into a huge fight with me because I find it unwise to make analogies to a geopolitics from over 70 years ago. She went on about how I was an idiot for even daring to I just started at her open-mouthed and said, so what you're saying is you really don't think there's any reason to find historical precedent and look to it so we're not doomed to repeat it? And she responded with something like, that's so stupid. How much could it change things? The world is nothing like it was then. Besides, you're not even talking about the same countries. I have thought less of her ever since. Unwise to make analogies. It's not even just that I don't trust her opinions on history. I seriously doubt her intelligence for being so adamant that the past is irrelevant and dwelling on it only hurts us. Dwelling on the past is different than seeing a current situation differently through the lens of historical context. Those people that think they're so much higher, intellectually, than other people and always try to quote and talk about philosophical concepts. 95% of the time it feels like irrelevant BS to make them sound smarter. Yes, I have that problem with certain groups at uni. I actually know what they're talking about and most of them are half right at best. It happens all the time on Reddit. The second you type a buzzword, people will automatically stop reading whatever you wrote and write the angriest reply they can muster. The other day there was a thread where someone was talking about the pain of losing a child. Someone replied to it and began with the words "as a mother," and people absolutely flipped their crap. Nobody cares that you have kids. IT doesn't make you some wise monk, oh my god. Completely ignoring the fact that someone who has children might understand the pain of losing them in a way that someone without children may not. It's really no different than Tumblr's SJW bulls when you think about it. Redditors are triggered just as easily. Redditors are triggered just as easily. Amen. Narcissists are impossible to have a conversation with. I briefly rented a room from someone who would only talk about herself. When I first moved in, I thought she just wanted me to get to know her, so I didn't think much of it, but it got really old really quickly. A few months in, we were sitting around talking, and once again the conversation revolved around her. I tried to steer to a topic unrelated to us both no less than 3 times. A current event, music, and cannabis. But she brought it back to her every single time. That's when I realized conversations with her were a complete waste of my time. I get it. We all like to talk about ourselves. But for frick's sake, if you're an adult who isn't a complete dumbass, you should be able to talk about something else once in a while. I began avoiding conversations with her, but that just turned into her talking at me about herself, so I started to avoid her altogether. It wasn't a great living situation. She had major issues. I moved out in less than a year. Back in high school, there was this one guy who always turned the conversation to Call of Duty, sex, or how much of a B our English teacher was. TLDR, college friend is a scumbag. During college years, I left for summer break back to my hometown. I sent out an email blast to a group of friends asking if anyone wanted to sublet my room for the summer at half price. No takers, so I just left my stuff there. While I was at my hometown, I was talking to my housemate over the phone about how I'll be briefly going back to campus to see my GF in the middle of summer, when he offhandedly remarked that frat brother Joe had been staying in my room. My housemate thought Joe had the okay from me. I was surprised because Joe had been part of my email blast, and we'd been through a lot together, so I was pretty upset that he tried to get a freebie behind my back. Not so much about the money, but violating our friendship by being so disrespectful. While on the phone with him, he told me I was overreacting and to calm down, when all I wanted was an apology. He refused to apologize and just said he'll throw me a couple of bucks and naming his own price, instead of being a proper decent human being. After arguing, I was so I wrote him an email stating that if he would not apologize then the friendship was over. His stubborn butt said let it be. When I got back to campus, needless to say, he didn't move out. He slept on my bed. He went through my stuff, and I had to stay at my GF's parents' house. I had decided to talk to him and explained why I was upset, and even apologized for the impulsive email ultimatum I had sent him. Then when I was about to discuss how he could just pay me whatever he can afford, he cuts me off and says, "I know what you're trying to do here. You're just wanting me to pay, and after sending that kind of email, I'm not gonna pay it anymore." He took over another housemate's room that was also gone for the summer, but I still didn't want to be under the same roof as that scumbag, so I stayed at my GF's house. To this day, I no longer consider him a friend, and I can't have scumbag toxic people like that around me. Betrayal is the worst feeling in the world. I was meeting this girl my cousin was trying to set me up with. I had suggested grabbing a sandwich and a drink at a nearby pub with no pressure. Not a date, just a hi how you doing and see if there's a spark there. She was all for it, liked the no pressure thing. Anyway, day comes and it's like a Tuesdays and she's running late. I say no prob, I'll meet you there. Original plan anyway, just come when you can. She calls. She's on her way. Cool. She hesitates and says, "You know I don't remember what you look like," and I look around. It's 5 PM on a Tuesday. I am the only one in that pub who isn't either really old or really committed to drinking. There's like 4 old people and me here. Don't worry, I stick out, haha. I'm okay, but can I get a little description? Sure. I got an eye patch and a peg leg, but they made me leave my parrot in the car. I smiled. Stupid joke, but made me smile. Dead silence on phone. Then, really, you could hear the worry that my cousin was trying to get her to date a pirate. I knew then she wouldn't get my humor. I should have told her to turn around. I didn't. It wasn't a bad time, but I had to explain every joke. She was so literal, I'm sure she provided Drax the Destroyer's dialogue in Guardians of the Galaxy. Glad it didn't work out with her though. My wife gets my jokes, even thinks most of them are funny. She lets me know when they don't work, lol. People who constantly complain. I just can't take anything they say seriously because any conversation always turns into them complaining about something. I especially hate the people who are relentlessly negative and complain that nobody wants to hire them, date them, or be their friends. completely oblivious to the fact that the reasons for all are that they're a total drag to be around. I work with several people like this, and when I talk to any of them, I can literally feel them sucking the soul right out of me. I curl competitively, the sport on ice with brooms and rocks, and I had a teammate, this past season, that would negate anything I said and would argue all the time. Even if he was wrong, he would just get really defensive and argue more. I don't think we had one real meaningful conversation all winter. Brush yourself a path right out the door on that one. My college roommate thinks mockery is funny. It's his form of humor. It's either vapid and makes me wonder why he's talking, or it's sharp and I wonder why I am friends with him. Either way, immature and only knows how to joke at the expense of others. I, like everyone else, have that coworker. It's an office job, and it requires a fair amount of communication within the team, and I'm fine with that. We've all been doing this for a while. She's beautiful. She's the most beautiful girl I've ever interacted with regularly. She's friendly and outgoing, and greets everyone with a smile. She has a fiancé, and they just bought a new house. She has, by her own admission, dated over 80 men. She has a type, dim and desperate for her attention. Anyone who doesn't fit those criteria is quickly cut out. She previously dumped her fiancé twice, and moved across the country for this job. She got back together with him when he moved across the country without even asking her, then proposed immediately, almost by accident. His parents are rich. He made the entire down payment on that new house. He's perfect for her. She is superstitious in a traditional Asian way. She has a science degree, but she doesn't understand science, and she believes what she wants. She doesn't know science, or music, or pop culture, or history, or politics or current events. She doesn't care about those things. She doesn't care about reality. She only cares about herself. And that's fine, because she surrounds herself with men who only care about her. She knows she treats her fiancé poorly, and she openly calls him stupid and regrets agreeing to marry him. She says it's okay to treat him however she wants, because she makes it worth it, and he wouldn't be with her if he didn't like it. When he bought her a house, she immediately used it as leverage against him. If he doesn't do what she says, she'll break up with him, sell the house, and keep half of the money which she did nothing to earn. She keeps at least 2 exes in her back pockets at all times so she can maintain pressure on her fiancé, and she occasionally goes on solo vacations with another woman's husband. She has no interest in him, but he puts her up in nice hotels, sends her to spas, and brings her to parties. She is 30 years old and still chews with her mouth open and smacks on everything she eats, because anyone who might have had the self-respect to point it out was weeded out immediately. She is Daisy and she found her Gatsby. She is too beautiful for her own good, and too stupid to care. This post is truly a gem. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.